Welcome back. Now what we need to do is that we need to work on the complete payment function. So first of all, in order to complete payment, the first step is that we need to pass the request here in this function. So we need to say here request because we will be using I will be using the session. So we need to pass the request. And then the first step here in this function is that we need to check whether we have a transaction ID or not. And also we need to check whether we have order ID or not. Because if we don't have these two, it means that the user has not completed payment. It means that the user did not pay yet. So the user uh, might create an order but might not have already paid. So first of all here, before we complete payment and approve payment and deliver anything to the user, we need to here say if and then request, and then we need to check the session. We need to say session and then has and then order ID, order underscore ID, and request session has transaction ID. So only if we have these two we can move on and continue. Else we should we should say return redirect to the home page. So in case we have these two, we can move on and approve and complete payment and store information in the database. So here what we need to do is that we need first to there are a few steps that we need to take. The first step is that we need to get the transaction ID and the order ID in order to store them in the database, and also we need to change the order status to paid, because at this point if we have the transaction ID it means that the user has paid, because the transaction ID will be issued by PayPal. So it means that PayPal approved payment and PayPal transferred money from the user from the customer to our account. So it means that payment was successful. So here what we need to do is that we need to get the order ID. We need to say order ID is equal to request and then session and then get, and then we need to get the order ID. And we also need to get the transaction ID. So the transaction ID is also going to be equal to request session and then get transaction ID. And then we need to change the order status. So I'm going to say here order status, order underscore status is going to be now equal to paid. Earlier the order status earlier was not paid. Now we need to change it to paid so that we know that user paid and we can ship and deliver the product or products to the user. We also need the payment date. So the payment date is going to be date, and then we can use the YMD, which stands for year, month, day. We will be able to know when the user completed the payment. So now the second step is that after we get this information and after we created these variables, we need to change the order status in the orders table to paid. So here I'm going to say change order status from not paid to paid, and that should be done using the database. We need to say database and then table, and make sure that you have imported the database at the top. So at the top here, if you did not import the database, we need to say here use and then illuminate and then backslash support backslash facades backslash database db. So make sure that you import the database class here at the top. This is very, very important, because if you don't import this, you will not be able to use the database. Again, that's use illuminate /support /facades /database db. And then here we need to say db database table, and then what we want to store is that what we want to the database or the table that we want to use is the orders table. So I'm going to say orders, and then we need to we need the order ID because we need to change the order status of a specific order. Therefore, we need to say here where 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 order ID which is the ID of that order is going to be equal to the order ID. So we need to change the order status of that order ID. So we need to say orders where order ID, and then we need to update. And what we want to update is that we want to update the status. We need to say status now is going to be equal to the order status, which is paid. And that's it. This is going to return true or false. So I'm going to store this in a variable called affected, so that we can check whether the payment status has been changed or not. Let me walk you through this one more time. So here what I'm doing is that I'm saying database table orders. I'm accessing the orders table, and then I'm saying here change. I'm saying update the status field to paid of the order that has this ID. So I'm telling this orders table, hey orders table, I want you to change the order the order status from not paid to paid to the order that has this ID. Pretty simple. And then we have this affected. This is gonna be true or false. If this is true, it means that the database the order status has been changed. If it's false, it means that it hasn't been changed. However, this is always going to be true as long as this code is correct and you don't have any typos. This is gonna be true. And the third step is that we need to store payment information in the payments table. So we need to say here store payment info in payments table. So to store the payment information in the payments table, it's pretty simple, and we have already done this with other tables. We need to say database and then table, and then which table we want to use. Well, we want to access the payments table. I'm going to say payments. So we want to access the payments table, and then we want to store the information. And to store the information, we say insert. We insert the information. So I'm going to insert, and what we want to insert is that we want to insert the following. Let me push this. So what we want to insert is that we want to insert, let me add here, by the way, it must be an array. So again, let me here type an array. It must be an array, and inside that array we need to have key value pairs. So the keys will be the following. First, we want the order ID. In the payments table, we want to store the order ID because in order to know which order has been paid, we need to know its order ID. The order ID is the only unique thing about any order. So we need to say order ID is equal to the order ID. We need to store the order ID. We also need to store the transaction ID because each single order, each single paid order must have a transaction ID. As long as the order, or as soon as the order has been paid, it means that a transaction ID has been issued by PayPal. So we need to associate the order ID with the transaction ID. And finally, we need to store the date. We need to say date in order to know when that happened. So in order to store the the day on which the transaction took place. So the the date is going to be equal to the payment date. Payment date. And that's it. Now, the last step is that we need to remove everything from the session. So here, in order to remove everything from the session, remove everything from session. So why would we want to remove everything from the session? Well, because after user completed payment, there is nothing else that the user should do. It's over. It's the user completed everything that they need to do, and now it's our job to deliver products to the user. So after that, we just need to remove everything from the session, and that can be done using the request and then session, and then a function called flush. The flush function will remove everything from the session because there is no need, and we shouldn't keep anything in the session anymore. So we need to remove everything from the session, and finally we return. We just say return, and then we return to the thank you page. I'm going to say return redirect, and then we can call a function called route, and then we can redirect to the thank you page. We can say here thank you, which is a page that I'm going to create later. Thank you. By the way, you can say root thank you, or you can simply say redirect and then / thank you. So there is a difference between this and this. Redirect will use the URL itself, so it must be / thank you. But if you use root, if you pass here nothing, and if you say here root and then thank you, you shouldn't say / you should only say thank you. So there is a difference. Thank you. And we can return with the order ID, by the way. We can return here with the order ID at the end. We can say redirect, for example, redirect thank you, and then we can redirect with, and we can redirect with a message. So we can say here order ID, because we need to give the user the order ID, because the order ID is important for the user in case the user wants to return something to us, or issue a refund or ask for return or refund. They must deliver or give us the order ID. So now we are done with this part, and now we are complete with the complete payment function.